Well, good morning everyone, and welcome to this fourth Assuming Control seminar, and our final one for the 2016 program, titled Healing the Brain Through Light. It's great to see another excellent turnout, and I don't want to jinx it, but I reckon we got through all four without any rain, so that's something to be thankful for. If you've been along to previous seminars, you'll probably recognise me by now. If not, my name's Ed Weaver. I'm from Brain Injury SA, and I'll be your MC this morning. On behalf of Brain Injury SA, and also our presenting partner, the Lifetime Support Authority, we're really excited to have Dr. Mark Rogers with us here today to talk about cold laser therapy and its application for people with acquired brain injury. It's great also that some of his clients could join us and talk about their first-hand experiences. First of all, though, we've got some housekeeping matters. So if everyone could please turn their mobile phones off or to silent. Toilets are located out through the rear doors, with the women's and disabled toilets around to the left, the men's toilets around to the right. In the case of an emergency, an alarm will sound. You can exit this room through those rear doors, exit the building through the main entrance. There are also fire doors to the left and right. And the meeting point is in the parklands at the corner of North and West Terrace. Just to clarify with the questions, we'll be having time for Q&A at the very end, so if you could please hold on your questions until then, that'd be great. And we will be filming this seminar as well, so we'll get that up onto the Brain Injury SA website as soon as possible. Finally, I invite you all to stay on for morning tea at the conclusion. I'd now like to welcome Brain Injury SA board member Simon West to the stage to introduce Dr. Rogers.
Thanks, Ed. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, everyone, and welcome. I'm delighted that you are all here to join us today as we finalise the last information session to our Assuming Control series for 2016. I would like to firstly acknowledge this land that we meet on today as the traditional lands for the Kaurna people, and we respect the spiritual relationship with their country. Before I go on to introduce our special guest, I'd like to say a special thank you to those that contributed to the success of our Assuming Control events, which of course includes the wonderful and dedicated staff within Brain Injury SA, the team at Yellow Wig, and and importantly, I'd like to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to our presenting partners, the Lifetime Support Authority. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mark Rogers, an Adelaide GP, who will be discussing the exciting advancements into cold laser therapy. Whilst there is little known about this therapy, we'll also get an insight from his patients about their promising experience of the cold laser therapy. We're all excited to hear about how this treatment is starting to get the world's attention, so please join me in welcoming Dr. Mark Rogers.
So, good morning. Firstly, I would like to begin thanking Brain SA and particularly Ed Weaver for kindly inviting me to speak. It is a privilege that is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Thanks to the magical mind of Albert Einstein, the first laser was built in 1960, before I was born, at the Howard Hughes Research Institute. At the time, they were called a solution looking for a problem. Since then, they have become completely ubiquitous, with literally many thousands of applications. The internet would not be possible without them, for just one. In 1967, in Hungary, in Budapest, a Dr. Mester, who's considered the godfather of low-level laser therapy, was very concerned that they would possibly cause cancer. He shaved rats and mice and applied the laser, and to his astonishment, the hair regrew. This was the beginning of low-level laser therapy. There's never been a side effect since then. Today I'll be presenting three of my wonderful patients who are prepared today to sit down and discuss their case. The first one will be by a spouse, a partner, dear Sandy, and the other two are gentlemen that have been through traumatic brain injury and laser therapy. So with no further ado, I'll ask Sandy to come up and join me.
Hello.
Hello? Yes. So Sandy, can you tell me about your partner's Grant's story from 18 months ago?
Okay. Prior to the accident, Grant was a healthy, fit 50-year-old man. He cycled daily, he loved walking, he did bodyweight training, martial arts. He had a computer science degree and he earlier had run an animation company for 10 years. He played several musical instruments and composed songs for the family. He was the primary carer for our children while I worked, and he had just re-entered the workforce as an accounts assistant in the film industry. In August 2014, 2 years ago, he fell down a flight of stairs and sustained a severe traumatic brain injury. He spent a week in ICU and 4 months at the RA, and he's still a patient at Hampstead Rehabilitation Centre. 9 months after the accident, in 2015, Grant was doing quite well. He had started to speak, he was swallowing, eating meals every day. He was using a standing lifter for transfers. He could give thumbs up for yes and thumbs up for no. He was nodding and shaking his head, and he had started writing with his left hand. And he understood he was watching, funny videos and laughing at them, and he understood what we were saying. However, 2 months later, he started to fatigue. He talked less, that was the first thing that went, and then his swallowing stopped, so we could no longer feed him orally. And while at that time he was still doing well on the Western Neuro test, and he was still using a standing lifter, he was clearly degenerating in terms of swallowing and speaking. So we were told at the time that the excessive therapies and an awakening drug, which we'd been using called amantadine, may have been causing the harm, and that he needed a rest. And there was concern about glutamate flooding causing this harm. So we immediately took him off amantadine and minimised therapies, and unfortunately he entered an almost coma-like state again. He was reduced to squeezing his hand. Was the only thing he could do, so he could squeeze a hand once for yes and twice for no, and that was and he slept most of the day. So it was around that time, as you can imagine, I'd been reading a lot in that year, and it was around that time that I came across Norman Doidge's book, The Brain's Way of Healing. I think it had been published just before that time. It was a recent publication. So the chapter on laser therapy really intrigued me, and I thought immediately that of all the different types of possible therapies, that it could help Grant the most at that time, partly because he was so incapacitated, I guess. So I then, of course, did an internet search looking for anyone who could help me in South Australia or in Australia, someone who could either sell me the lasers or treat Grant, and I came across Dr. Mark Rogers. And I sent him an email explaining what was going on, and a couple of weeks later we got into contact, and I was delighted that he knew the book. He knew exactly what I was getting at, exactly what I wanted, and he agreed with me that he thought that Grant could benefit from this therapy. He also understood that Grant was not up to travelling in a taxi to the clinic at that time. And so I met Grant several times, and then he came and I met Mark several times, and then he came and met Grant at Hampstead. And we got permission from Hampstead for me to treat Grant using the lasers at Hampstead. So Mark explained how they worked and showed me how to use them and directed the treatment. But I did it on Grant daily at Hampstead. And so after a month of treating him at Hampstead, he was then well enough to take him to the clinic twice a week. And then we did that for 3 months. And his recovery, right from that very first week when I was treating him at Hampstead, I saw the recovery in that he had prior, he was hardly moving at all, like even in his sleep. Or then as soon as we started using it, he would stretch in his sleep. Like when he was waking, he would stretch his body out. Or I guess it wasn't deliberate movement, but he would move his arm, his left arm, which he had been moving before. And it might just be to scratch his face or something like that. And so, and he went from not being well enough to travel to being well enough to travel in a month. So I was very encouraged by it at the time. And I've got to say, there wasn't much else happening in terms of trying to help him move past this point. So it was exciting. Then, and I guess now,
How long down the track are you?
well, I think it was 3 months of twice a week, and now it's been another 2 months of once a week at the clinic, so 5 months, I guess, or since October when I started treating him. He's now awake for, at least, I think, probably 75% of the day now. So he still has a nap in the afternoon, which we encourage, and he still does sleep in his chair on and off, and he has good and bad days, but he's awake for, 75% of the day. He's writing and drawing with his left hand again, communicating in that way. He's playing simple musical tunes on a piano, because he obviously was a musician before, so that works really well for him. With both left and right hand as well. We've got his right hand working.
It shows some progression.
Yeah, there's some writing. Yeah, the little drawing of the sun. That was April. That was a while ago. He's swallowing again, so we're doing swallowing practice daily at the moment, and that's improving gradually with time. He's getting stronger. He's able to do arm wrestling with his left arm. Recently in physio, he was able to, on a prone tilt table, sort of come down into a squat and then pull himself back up. He hasn't done that for at least a year, like prior to when he went off amantadine. So he's getting stronger in the legs. He's feeling stronger, which is great. He laughs at jokes again. He's laughing. He has a great sense of humour. Laughs at jokes and television shows, and he can play.
Arm wrestles.
He arm wrestles. Yeah, he likes to arm wrestle. And he's getting so strong that I used to let him win, and now I just can't. Like, he does actually beat me. And he communicates. He's able to make choices. So in terms of he's continuing to improve. I guess the thing is that often at Hampstead I give him choices. We've got an hour and we can go for a walk, or we can try some swallowing practice, or you can have laser therapy. He often opts for laser therapy, and I see it awaken him. So often he's sleeping while I'm doing it. I've got the TV on, the lights are up, I'm talking to him, but he's just having trouble kind of staying awake. And then within that hour, he's awakens and he's more alert, he's more there. Yeah, it awakens him. And even coming to the clinic, often, as Malika, his therapist, will tell you, he turns up and he's asleep. He's been asleep in the taxi all the way there. And during that hour that we're doing laser therapy, he awakens to the point that he's pulling stuff off. And we have to play music for him to entertain him because he's bored, because he's just sitting there, with the lasers on him. I did want to thank Mark for taking Grant on, and Malika, his therapist, who for her dedication and ongoing support. Thanks, Malika.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the trouble. I'd like Tom Bunning to come up now, please. Welcome, Tom.
Hello.
So you were at Bond University 10 years ago, and what happened?
For me, they do 3 semesters in Bond, so only quick 3 weeks to get a break, and I meet up with Mum. She works at East Timor. I met her, and I come a few days in Adelaide, meet my friends, and a car hit me in Hyde Park, apparently.
You don't recall?
Apparently, yes.
And that was 10 years ago?
Yes, yeah.
And then you made a phone call last year because of what?
Mum,
Yep.
she gets excited at that book, very excited. So I thought I have to go
Norman
to
Doidge's
Toronto.
book, yeah?
Huh?
Norman Doidge's book.
Yes, and I thought I have to go to Toronto and go other places, and I thought I'm very busy. I do not much. So I thought, oh well, I like travel. I'd do that. I've not met I've not been to Toronto, but
Why not?
found you,
Yes.
and it's like walking distance in your shop, and I can go there, and I do therapy with Sharon, and
For 3
Quite
weeks,
different.
3 weeks intensive therapy,
I do
every
yes.
day for 3 hours. And what was
Yes.
the first thing you noticed?
I think possibly my concentration and my awareness is more clearer, and yeah, I decided I'm not going to take any drugs anymore.
And you're on quite a few, weren't you? Antipsychotics and antidepressants.
Yeah, the drugs
Yep.
the doctors like to give me, and they enjoy it. So I stopped them all, and I lost quite a lot of weight. I stopped smoking.
How much weight in total have you lost?
Oh, like 30, 40 Ks.
More than 30 kilograms, yeah.
Like the highest I got for 10 years, the highest I got 130, but normally I'm 115. But I got the closest here, I got 83, but I'm gaining a little bit, so I have to...
Having too much
drop a little
fun.
bit. Yeah, too much fun. I get it. My excuse is the hospital stint, so I can get a little bit chubbier, but I can lose it again later.
Can you tell me about Dr. Zeus?
Dr. Zeus, he's a good friend of mine, and my reading is not good. I've got aphasia. It takes me still going, my language, my talking. It takes me, I think, 3 months to say my name in Hampstead, and it's great fun. The nurses come, what is your name? Because I have to take drugs, and I can't say my name, and no one knows my name. So I have to, every time they have to do the list, what's your name? And I do, that's me, that one, that Tom. It's every time. But later I said my name, and very excited and very, it's going to be that way for quite a long time. But somehow my reading, some magic potions with your lasers, my reading is quite progressing, and I can do quite a lot of slowly.
You go to the library every day now, don't you?
Yes, I don't know. Yeah, I've got a walking distance library in my house, and well, not in my house, very close. So it's more quieter, and in my house I get distracted, so I go to the library and I go to the library and try to learn. And learning about myself, about my memory, because my memory is very confusing, so I'm just learning about working memory and somatic memory, and the other one, it's interesting for me anyway.
And you don't smoke?
Yeah.
Gave that up?
Yes, that's useful. I smoked for probably 10 years, and I try to do different ways to stop it. Doesn't really work, and I just stop.
And the alphabet, you can now read that?
Yeah, I can't. The alphabet is very difficult for my memory, whatever, and doing the alphabet, and I don't know why I do some, I'm not sure why, but I'm trying to learn my weird memory. I do numbers and stuff, and that's useful. It's working.
Good. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Okay.
I don't know.
I thank you for your contribution. Your mum's just now going to give a little bit more, so you can swap the microphone. This is Anne Bunning, whose introduction it was to laser therapy. Just tell us about Tom.
Yes, there's just been a very big change since Tom did the lasers. So he did this 3 days a week for 4 hours each day, and then on Christmas Eve he was able to say, he was able to say the alphabet. Now that's something, for someone with aphasia, that's really difficult, and that's the first time in 10 years. Sorry, it is quite amazing what's happened. He's got massive more confidence. He wanders up and down the street talking to people, which he didn't do before, so he's able to meet people. And someone with aphasia, that's a really socially isolating thing to have. So he's writing, he still can't write, but starting to read is something that he's always wanted to do, and it's just amazing. And I think if it was accessible to more people, it would just be such a breakthrough, because, as Mark will tell you, there's no refund, there's no reimbursement from any system, so we have to pay, and that limits it to so many people. So, you know, if we can do anything, it's wonderful that Brain Injury SA have this session, because it's the only thing that's happened in 10 years. Tom's got quite a severe brain injury, and while he looks fine, he can get up and watch TV, but now he's doing things. He's just doing so much more, and it's... Thanks.
Thank you. So now I'll call on Joel Page, our third and final presenter, who presented last week at the National Brain SA on depression and anxiety from traumatic brain injury. Please sit down. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you.
I'm feeling like Parkinson here. So 6 years ago, you were driving a car. Would you drive like that again?
I drove okay, but I managed to make my car fly. Flight, okay. Landing, issue.
And you had a fiancée, and unfortunately she didn't stay around.
Yep.
So 4 years later, 2 years ago, you were incredibly depressed.
Yep.
And what happened then? You tried to hang yourself.
Yeah, tried to hang myself.
Yeah. So depression and despair has been a huge part of your life.
Yes.
Your two lovely parents in the background over here, they've told me each time I've seen them that they lived in absolute fear that you would leave the planet at any moment. And now they can enjoy the life you have and the love you have, and you're not depressed. So can you tell? It was January you came for therapy, wasn't it?
Yes.
Can you tell us about it?
Oh, it was great. You think it doesn't do anything. You sit there with someone putting lasers on your head. You have lasers up your nose, lasers in your mouth. You think it's nothing, but it works.
And what's the biggest difference for you?
I've noticed my speaking is a lot clearer. My walking is a lot better. I'm more upright.
Your parents said that you might have watched a movie but never really understood it. Now you watch television with them and you know what the story is and you can follow. So sleep is okay?
Sleep is... It's not going...
Not okay, yeah. But the ability to analyse, he's an engineer by training. Your functional ability to think through situations is much greater. That's what he's...
Yes.
Yeah.
It's gone back to normal.
Yeah.
I always say, when you have a brain injury, you can never get smarter. You can try and get back as much as you started with.
Yeah.
And I'm gradually getting it back.
And while you still take medication,
Yep.
your mood is very stable.
Yes, a lot more stable.
And that's part of what we see, is that inflammation is a major cause of depression. And so people in pain, which are more common my patients, are said to be depressed because they're in pain, but actually they're depressed because their body's inflamed, therefore their brain's inflamed. So it does have a dramatic effect on that. What else would you like to say? Yeah?
I just wish that this would be out for everybody to get to. There's nothing from the government to help.
Yeah.
It costs a fortune.
Small fortune.
Yeah, I know, but money should not be what...
Yeah.
Unless you go to get it.
Yeah.
It should be for everybody.
Was it enjoyable? Was it pleasant?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but it wasn't unpleasant.
Wasn't unpleasant, okay. I might just get your dad, if he's okay, to come up. And thank you. Thank you, Joel.
Easy.
Peter Page. Yes, can you just give us your thoughts?
Yeah, quite frankly, we were amazed. I've got a question in mind, and I wondered initially if it was just that he was going out 3 times a week and that was a placebo effect. It was immediate. His mood changed, his communication skills. He was very insular before. He is a changed man. The intellect was always there, the humour's always been there, but he shares the way he feels. He's open. I'll give you an example. He's just developed and released a tweak which is stunning, which is quite amazing. I don't quite understand what he does, but generally speaking, he's happier. He's talking about coming off the antidepressants, and he's got a positive attitude to the future. And it's amazing what's happened. And I agree with Joel's sentiment. I wonder why they can't work out. I understand the protocols and the way things work, but surely, if it was available to everyone, the actual cost benefits for people to feel useful back in the workforce, so on and so forth, if someone could just do the simple maths, it should be available to everyone.
Thank you for your words.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you to my patients. I could talk for hours, but it wouldn't mean anything if it wasn't any evidence, so I really appreciate them coming along today. This is the technical part. It'll be brief. I've actually written a book which is directed at the patient, and that has the detail at a patient level of how it works, and if anyone wants a copy, my staff are here, they can help you find one from our clinic, because I'd be happy that you read it. Along the way, it's got lots of names. The one that we use in the clinic, you can see, is cold laser. That's actually wrong. It's just that it's not hot. So in science, so the first lasers could burn people, could chop eyes, could do great things, but and so people fear that surely the laser will burn. Well, it doesn't. It's actually a cool laser. And cold becomes the opposite to hot. So the technical term around the world now, of only 2 years, is photobiomodulation. And really the field that I've been in for 20 years is biophysics. And sadly, Australia is so far behind the world, it is outrageous that you either study plants and call it biology, or you study the universe and call it physics. And the two don't cross. Whereas in Russia, they have 500 students doing PhDs on biophysics. So that's partly why it's weird that we're the only ones that do it in Australia, is that we don't train people to think about how light interacts with biology, life, humans. The modulation reflects that it can be either inhibitory, which can be useful, or stimulation. So dentists in Europe use this instead of needles for anaesthetic. If you spend 12 minutes with the laser on the right nerve, it won't work for 2 days. And that's why there's acupuncture laser, because it puts the nerve to sleep. Whereas if you put 6 minutes on a hamstring injury or a bad back, it'll stimulate collagen repair. But if you treat it for 12 minutes, it'll inhibit the collagen repair. So it's a time factor, but yeah, we can modulate how the body functions by using light. And that's not particularly interesting really, because if the sun blew up right now, in 8 minutes we'd all be dead. So all the laser really means is which part of the wavelength of the sun can a machine reproduce in one colour. And that can be an X-ray, it can be a microwave, but in our field it happens to be invisible light. These are if you looked it up today on Google, the most common one you'd find is low-level laser therapy, and then that's shortened to triple LT, and then there's ours, but actually now it's all PMB. People always ask, are LEDs equal to lasers? Well, they're all photons. That's why they work. It's just that LEDs that are in your house don't penetrate the skin very deeply, the tissues, whereas laser light is smart, it's synchronised, it's coherent, and therefore it penetrates, and it's been measured to get through a thigh, but in the brain it gets at least a centimetre through the skull. So yes, both are equally efficacious. They'll do medicine if you get the light to the cell. It always starts to sound a little bit too good to be true about what laser can do, but that's because of the sun and biology, and that is if a cell is normal, the mitochondria don't need energy, so they don't accept the photons on offer. But as we age, we inflame. As we inflame, we have oxidative stress. That's why everyone talks about antioxidants. The light is the best antioxidant there is. And so if we can get the device to get the photon to the cell and it's not perfectly oxygenated, then it takes the energy and it does its job. And so that's the point. Does the light get to the pathology? So it's not uncommon for a child born to have photobiomodulation because they have jaundice. And so it was worked out by a nurse 50 years ago that if you put the baby to the sun, the jaundice went more quickly. And that is the protein that vibrates in the wavelength that the blue light of UV does, bilirubin, absorbs the blue light and therefore it's broken down and it denatures. We also use it for eczema. You go to clinics of dermatologists, you go and have UV light, even though they tell you it causes cancer, they'll treat your eczema and your dermatitis with blue light. The point is that the blue sky light is more energetic than red and infrared. The blue light of the sky is high intensity energy. The photons are more energetic. Red is less than blue, but more than infrared, and so we treat ulcers and burns and bed sores, wounds, because it gets into the skin but not through the whole dermis. And so I call infrared light Goldilocks. It's the perfect energy light because our body's nearly 100% transparent to it. And so as soon as we apply it to the skin, we know it's getting in. I see chronic pain as chronic swelling. The clinic that we run before any brain work is a soft tissue injury clinic. Bad backs, fibromyalgia, brain fog in migraine people, early Alzheimer's. We've been doing that for basically 18 years. The light stimulates collagen repair. So every muscle is attached to every bone by collagen. And so a back strain that's 20 years old or a car accident that's so-called whiplash is a collagen injury. And by getting the micro beam of light to the micro injury, we stimulate repair. The chronic swelling is 150 red proteins. Every bee sting's red, every scald is red, every sunburn is red, because the proteins, histamines, prostaglandins, substance P, they all vibrate in the red zone. So our retina detects the vibration in the red zone. We treat tinnitus as microlymphedema of the brain because people who have chronic pain have chronic inflammation of their brain. We've got some at the front desk, a copy if you'd like of these. Oh shit, yeah, you're free to take one of those. What this shows is a migraine person on the top with our infrared camera. So our skin is our thermoregulator. We control our core temperature with our brain by how much blood flows through the skin. And so you die of hypothermia in a boat accident before you drown because of your core temperature. So when someone's injured for a month, a week, 10 years, we see that as intense blood flow in the infrared camera, which our eyes can't see, comes up white, and then we've lasered the person at the top for 4 months and evaporated the chronic lymphedema, which allows the muscles to relax. And so I see migraine as a neck injury or back injury that causes a deformity. And the migraine people say, my head feels like a boulder. And then this is the so-called fibromyalgia at the bottom with that Dowger's hump where the green is, and that's because the head's so far forward that it stretches the skin. And again, 4 months later, the colour you want to be is the mid-range temperature, which is green. So people come red and white. And these are more examples of the same. So that's the mid-thoracic back pain. So in 2015, Norman Doy presented his second book, and to my delight, Chapter 4 was on laser therapy. My life's been a lot easier since then. Dr. Fred Kahn, I went 12 years ago to see him, and we've worked together for those 12 years really closely. He's an 86-year-old, now 88 actually, surgeon, and we would email each other once a week. Fred and Norman's become my best mate in the world, and we do Skype, all sorts of things, because we're all at that sort of frontier of showing people that inflammation is what it's all about, and light is the best anti-inflammatory ever invented. Dr. Kahn now, he hadn't done a brain injury treatment with laser 3 years ago. He's now done 1,000 cases, and he claims a 90% success rate, which Norman's looked at. Completely different topic, but really important, is I worked it out when I used to suffer migraine and tinnitus, and I got better with all this. And when the tinnitus went, it was pretty obvious what had happened, and that was I didn't have an inflamed brain. But until June last year with this paper, any doctor in the world would tell you that it was laughable to think there was a lymphatic system in the brain. And I told them 10 years ago that's because they think the world's flat. You can't, the lymphatic system is a drain. Every artery takes oxygen and every vein brings CO2. For every pair of those, there's a lymphatic vessel. In our belly, they're the size of a pipe. The brain is the most active metabolism of the body. If it didn't have a drain, it'd blow up, I used to tell them. Well, thankfully, these people published in Nature last year and showed that this is where the brain drains, and we stick lasers there all the time, and the brain and the lymphatic system is not separated, which is Norman Doidge's work. We just have one lymphatic system, and so that's why the acupuncturist will tell you if you do that, your headache will move on, and that's literally putting pressure through the system temporarily. So we've known for a long time, if we treat the brain, we treat the lymphatic system, we're treating both. And so if we put the light on the skin, we can affect the brain. And that was done 12 years ago, an MRI was done on the optic artery. As the light touched the skin, the optic artery instantly dilated, and the toe artery did as well. So it's a whole body effect. And so, yeah, they published that they actually saw the vessels in the brain, which drain lymphatic fluid down through the cervical nodes. And I guarantee you, if you asked 100 doctors, they'd say no, there's not a lymphatic system, and therefore there's not an immune system in the brain either. The results surprised everyone. This find is the neuroimmunological version of stumbling across a unicorn. They're not my words, this is the paper. Not only had the system gone undiscovered until now, but textbooks argued against its very existence, which is the flat earth thing. As a result, neuroimmunologists have struggled to understand the mechanism of the brain. At the end of the article, it says this dogma thrown out means that we should be treating Alzheimer's, MS, Parkinson's as neurodegenerative immunological disorders and TBI. They carry fluid and immune cells from the brain into the deep cervical lymph nodes where immune cells enter and exit. I deduced 15 years ago that tinnitus was chronic lymphedema in the brain. And so then the point about neuroplasticity being there is we saw it for years, that if you treat a chronic pain person and get rid of their inflammation, their brain changes and they start to appreciate where their injury of 20 years ago is. And we could see how brain function would come back in the migraine person who lost their brain fog. So we've been seeing it for a long time. But what we also see with Norman's work is that laser can't bring a dead cell back. So if someone has a scar on their brain, we're not treating it. However, by getting rid of all the chronic lymphedema of the brain, as these patients present, you then actively see the rewiring. And as Norman says, every day do something that scares you, every day do something that's novel. If you do that with a clean brain, a la Alzheimer's, not too far, we get the early Alzheimer's, we can make a big difference. Last thing I'm going to present, how are we going for time? Okay, all right. So I was lucky enough to travel a bit and meet Michael Hamlin, who, well, he was lucky because Mr. Wellman was a producer in Hollywood, and he got better from laser 20 years ago, and so he donated enough money for them to have 300 researchers working full-time at Harvard on this. And he presented in February photomodulation and the brain, traumatic brain injury and beyond. And the questions that he answered were that in many literature, researchers report that science has achieved a quantum leap in the understanding and use of light to restore physiological function. presenting that PBM represents a novel hope for treating complex diseases. With its cost-effectiveness and potential to benefit the lives of most vulnerable people, the researchers forecast the mainstreaming of PBM. The list of applications for it range from pain relief, wound healing to heart attack reduction is astonishing. One such application, the treatment of brain disorders, is particularly compelling because drug treatments for neurological are ineffective. Hamlin explained its application and treatment. The work done by him and his collaborators has elucidated, this was important, so this came out in May. We'd known for about 10 or 12 years how it worked, but this is actually the first publication to say this is how it works at the cell level. And they've sought to understand the impact of light at the molecular, cellular and tissue levels. His team has prioritised its work to help the technique gain acceptance among the medical community. And so these are the improvements. Near infrared, this is their statements, not mine. Near infrared light can penetrate through the scalp and skull to 1 centimetre. Clinical studies show that serial light treatments help those suffering from chronic TBI by improving cognition, post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of the work's done in Wisconsin where all the soldiers of Afghanistan and Iraq, they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars using light there. And functioning verbal memory. That's just to show you that it's been worked out. I don't intend to go through that. This is their method of treatment. This is the one that we use that people can buy and take home, and it's very light and functional. And we actually put it on children as well, and it plugs and plays. That's a bit more intense. And they state in here the impact on patients' lives can be dramatic. And with that, we'll move to questions. This paper that I was going to read a bit more of is here today. There's about 50 copies if you want to read the science more detailed.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rogers, for that excellent presentation. Photobiomodulation is such an exciting treatment method. It was wonderful to learn more about the theory behind it and how it works, but also to hear people's experiences. And thank you so much to Sandy and Tom, Anne, Joel and Peter for sharing their very personal stories with us today.